All right. So, thank you to everyone who's joining us from Ed 676 at Arcadia University. Today is June 19th, 2014. This is our second to last Google Hangout of our class. We've been meeting for past few weeks, and um, we are adjusting our schedule from Tuesday to Thursday because of graduation season. If it's possible, um, I'd like to begin with some highlight from this week, like what's going on in your life that is worth mentioning. Hopefully, it's something positive, but it can be something that you're grappling with, something that you feel challenged by as well. If it's okay with you, I'll begin with my highlight of the week. I got to see class of 2014 at Science Leadership graduate on Monday, and then the students that I taught 4 years ago at another high school, I made sure to attend their graduation as well, and that's why I had to adjust my class schedule. And it was really a poignant moment for me to see students that I haven't seen in 4 years and to see how they've grown and changed over the past 4 years, even though I haven't had daily contact with them. So it made me think about our impact on kids, and it made me think about how kids are shaped by their environment and by different schools that they attend. So it was just a really interesting experience for me to see kids that I knew 4 years ago at a very different point in their lives. So those of you who are joining us just now, we're beginning this Google Hangout with some highlight from our week, some high point, or some challenging point that you've been grappling with. Whoever wants to go next can go next, and I'll mute myself.
I can go. Um, Mine also centers around our graduation at Cheltenham High School. So I was the senior class sponsor this year. So I actually got to speak at graduation and read the names, which I messed one up. But hey, everyone makes mistakes. Um, but it was kind of when I read the chapter in Thrive about like listening to yourself and like challenging yourself and not if you have something to say, you believe like just believe in yourself kind of. Like I had a really rough first year at Cheltenham and like went through a whole process of like pre-enriched supervision and kind of like I thought I was going to lose my job and then to come in the second year and be the sponsor and then like be standing on the stage with like the superintendent and like all of these people from the school district, it was just a really amazing experience not only to be part of like the students graduating and all of their accomplishments, but I felt like proud of myself because I like believed in myself. So that was my highlight.
That's an awesome highlight. Thank you. Whoever wants to go next, please go.
I had a really bad week. So I really have no high point to share. Putting that out there. We had a death in the family. Had to leave town, so it was a difficult week.
I'm so sorry for your loss, Sandra, and thank you for being here. And if at any point you need to take some time for yourself, please know that you should feel totally comfortable doing that. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
As I mentioned last week that I'm on disability right now, so I'm not teaching, so I don't have a highlight from inside the classroom. But my doorbell rang this week, and it was one of the students I had taught up until October stopping by to see how I was doing. And I'd say that was my highlight really regarding teaching.
Oh wow, that's incredible point. Thank you for sharing that, Jules.
Well,
The highlight I had this week was, well, I actually had off all this week because my summer vacation started on Friday. But we had a chance to get in and rewrite some of our Digital Academy curriculum, which is our computer-based class, which was really nice. So yesterday and today we kind of spent time just kind of revamping it, making it more challenging. One of the things that my coworker and I, whenever we get observed, our vice principal always asks us, is it rigorous? Is it challenging? So we kind of, I mean, joking and not joking, we kind of try to make it more rigorous, and that was kind of our goal. Just kind of adding new projects, new activities, new assignments, and I mean, we've been working with that same curriculum for about 3 years, so it was like time for a change, which was really nice. So I'm kind of excited and looking forward to September so that we can see what the new curriculum looks like.
Thank you for sharing that highlight, and I think it's interesting that you did this work during a week when one of the assignments was to reimagine a unit plan. So hopefully this was a good opportunity, and that assignment has some utility in your life and wasn't just like a waste of your time to do that. And I want to talk a little bit more about that assignment if you have a chance to do so in a few moments. Angelique, do you want to share your highlight or anything else that stands out for you from this week? I'm not sure if she can hear me or if her microphone is not working. But I wanted to thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing a little bit of yourself in your highlights. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this week, and maybe I was hoping to start with some observations and some comments and questions from either Chapter 4 of Thrive or Jim Burke's chapter. Could we start with some observations and some potential questions that were raised for you from this past week? And maybe we can start with anyone who would like to start.
Mina, I think what I really liked in Chapter 4, well, first of all, there are a lot of things that applied to me, but I liked the term, I think you did it, I don't think you quoted somebody, creative noncompliance with what the administration was. And I thought that was a really succinct, excellent term to how I have to, most of the time, teach.
Other things that stood out, and maybe we can even dig deeper into creative non-compliance and some of the challenges that come with it. But I'd love to hear other comments and observations as well.
I really liked when you talked about what keeps teachers from trying new things and the fear, and the best way to overcome fear is just to start. And, you know, I often say that to students who are having trouble writing. Just put down a sentence, just any sentence, and it's a start. And that really struck me that you have that in the book as well.
It's always strange to hear feedback on something that you've written with a lot of passion and care, but it's also interesting to hear feedback on something that you've written that you've like required people to read. So this is like, forgive me for feeling slightly strange about your reactions to Thrive, but please know that they mean a lot to me, and it's really interesting to just get any feedback at all, because when I was writing it, like, I was like, oh my God, maybe 2 other people will read it, and that'll be awesome. So it's been really interesting to get a wider perspective on it. I also included a chapter from Jim Burke, which I realized that was high school literacy focus, and I was hoping that beyond that very specific um, set audience for that piece, that you would still find some value in it in thinking about larger questions that shape our practice. Was there anything that stood out to you from Jim Burke's work, or anything else from Thrive? Maybe others who haven't had a chance to share. Tanu, if you're just joining us, we've just shared highlights from our week, and we're taking observations and questions from the readings from this week, which included Chapter 4 of Thrive and Chapter 1 from Jim Burke's work.
I think one thing, because when I read the Jim Burke part, it was kind of like, does this really apply to high school math? But I think that it kind of ties into the one chapter in Thrive, also just like establishing a purpose. And like, I don't know that that's something I always like do. Like, I know what topics and what content needs to be taught, but like being a new teacher, I'm just kind of trying to like get them that content, and I'm not always thinking with a purpose and like, how does this apply to the bigger world? And if I didn't share the graduation highlight, I was going to share, I was part of interviews for a new math special ed teacher at our school like this week, and it was really, it made me reflect a lot on my own practice, because everyone that came in like talked about real world examples and being connected to the world, and all of their mini lessons were like real world examples, and I was like, wow, how much do I really actually do this in my own classroom? Like, so I think that even though it was centered on literacy, it definitely has application everywhere.
It means a lot to me that you kept an open mind, even though it was a high school literacy piece. I think the big questions piece is something I want to delve a little bit more into. Like, what does an essential question look like in a high school English classroom versus a high school business and marketing course versus a high school math course versus a high school social studies classroom, or whatever the case might be. How do questions ground our practice, and in what ways do you use questions to shape your practice? Is something that I'm really curious in hearing a little bit more about, but I'm also hoping and pushing and probing towards that type of thinking. So maybe that might be a good thing for us to share. Like, how do you use questions to push students thinking and learning, and how do questions shape the way you plan and execute student learning experiences?
I shared on my blog this afternoon that every day in our classrooms we have to display an essential question regarding either that particular lesson or the unit lesson. And administration, that's one of the first things they look for when doing evaluations. And my school's really pushing right now higher order thinking, and really looking to see what kind of questions we're asking students. Are they designed to go back to pre-learned material? Does it bring in real-world situations like she just mentioned? So my school's really making a movement towards that kind of thinking.
Like I said, we just did curriculum writing yesterday and today, and part of what I had to do was not only revamp the Digital Academy curriculum, but I had to actually create from scratch a brand new curriculum for my sports and entertainment marketing class that we just got board approved to develop, and now it has to get board approved for the curriculum. But I mean, I sat here for 2 days just kind of coming up with essential questions And then my essential questions had to relate to my SLOs, my student learning objectives. And I think, Sandra, was it you? I responded to your blog, I think, about your student learning objectives and how in my school that's what the new push is for, and that's what like our in-services in September will be all about. So I just did, I guess in 2 days I've done 2 things of curriculum based off of all essential questions and then geared toward the SLOs. So it's kind of funny that it's really good timing, I guess you could say.
I did it just for you, Jennifer.
Yep, thanks.
Just kidding. Others, how have questions shaped your practice, and how do you use questions to elevate student thinking?
I know for me, I don't really have that much experience other than student teaching where I've used essential questions, but I know I've been taught and other teachers have encouraged me to come up with essential questions that aren't necessarily only specific to English, which is what I would like to teach. So sometimes when we would brainstorm essential questions, we would think, okay, how does this apply to social studies, or is this general enough that we can motivate the students to think critically and, I guess, can make connections across discipline.
I think for me, also, like, I have 2 years of experience now, but I think that now that I know what topics are taught and I have a handle on all of the content that I teach, I think I'm, like, now what I want to do for next year and over the summer is, like, find a real world application for every topic. Like, it can be done. I mean, obviously some things are kind of cut and dry, but, I mean, it's possible, and if there's not a real world approach, then, like, make that topic a project-based, instruction, or, like, do something so that it's not just, like, lecture, try these problems, I will check them, are they right? Because I think that's kind of the habit I got into at the beginning, or towards the end of the year, and I don't really think that is the most sound instruction that I could be giving, if I'm being honest.
One of the units that I use in social studies, whether I'm teaching history or government, I call the Who is an American unit. So it's the question itself. And we look at the history of discrimination against various other groups, and how it's progressed through. And we seem to always have an other that either the government or the people of the country are against. And basically, they have to answer for themselves. They have an essay where describe what makes an American at the end of the unit, and that seems to get them thinking. Also, in regular class discussions, my favorite question is, what if? And then I change the facts of a historical event or our Constitution or some legal case that we're looking at related to the Constitution. What if this had happened? What do you think would be the outcome? What if Adolf Hitler had died in World War I when he fought? How would world history have changed? That kind of thing.
This might seem pedantic and obvious, but I think oftentimes we create the questions for students when creating unit plans and when creating learning objectives or creating learning experiences. I always think it's really interesting to ask students to create essential questions and inquiry questions, because they themselves have things that they might want to know more about. So, for example, again, my apologies for this being a literacy example, but I think this is a common enough text that most of us might have some understanding of it. Like, let's say that the text of inquiry is Hamlet, it would be interesting to ask students to create questions around parent-child relationships. And I think that's something that every student brings some experience and some common knowledge about that could reach a certain level of interest, but also a certain level of confidence where students feel comfortable making their own inquiries. So I think it's great that we all utilize deep and rich questions to shape our work, but I also want to think about the possibility of what happens when students set their own inquiries, or what does it look like when, you know, a fifth grade science class sets forth inquiry questions about I don't know, the local ecology or the way energy is conserved in their school or in their home setting. So I think it's also important to build in a chance for students' inquiry and students' curiosity, and I'm not sure how many times that happens. Like, it's great that we can come up with rich questions, but what would it look like if students came up with rich questions and then we actually honored those curiosities and actually took you know, steps in inquiry and research and analysis and presentation and followed through on those inquiries. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Are there times when you allow students to follow their own inquiry or their own curiosity or their own line of thinking in your classes? And what does that look like? And if you haven't, what could it look like if you allowed students to do that? Or if you asked students to do that, what would that look like?
What I like about that idea is that it allows students to take ownership of their learning and pave the pathways to their learning. And I think an example of that in which I've experienced it is during my student teaching, we had this unit called Injustice, Inequality, and Progress. And it was during the month of February, where typically what the English teachers did was obviously talk about Black History Month. But instead, what they did to this past semester was create an opportunity where students, I guess, get acquainted with all of the injustices in the world today, ranging from religion, sexual identity, class, all of these discussions. And what we did was present to them all of these, I guess, images, statistics, information, but the students were allowed to create questions, specific questions that interested them, to create an iSearch paper. I don't know if any of you are familiar with iSearch papers, but it was basically their way of taking a question that they're interested in and I guess writing about their journey in exploring that question.
That's a really interesting way of asking students to follow their own inquiry. Do other people have examples of times when you ask students to set forth their questions and work towards finding their own answers? Jules, I know you mentioned the what if projects for students to reimagine pivotal points in history. How about others?
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Jules, if you want to.
Project I wanted to tell you about that. I call it my active citizen project. Whatever. I have the students look at something that they disagree with that exists now. Something they want to change. Anything they want to change. It could be on their street, it could be their family, it could be statewide, national, whatever. Find something they don't like and want to change, and they have to, through the year, they investigate who made the decision, why is that the way it is, and how can it be changed, and then they have to go out and try to change it. And every 2 weeks, I dedicate a class period where we're discussing it, discussing where everybody is in their project. and they can ask each other questions. They can ask me questions. So they can come up basically with what it is they think is wrong, but I gave them the questions to investigate about it.
What is the outcome of that project once they find a cause or once they find an issue, and what happens on the student end?
They try to change it. So they could contact a legislator, or they could contact their neighbor if it's something going on in their whatever. They can gather people together to try to form something. They can work together to try to do something. So the end result actually is periodically I have them write essays about what their experience has been and how they feel about themselves as a change agent, and how they feel about what they've encountered, everything they've encountered. At the end of the year, I have them summarize the whole year. Now they don't have to, and that's one of the things the students get concerned about, right? They don't have to succeed in changing anything to get an A on it. They just have to keep working. So every 2 weeks when we have the class discussion, I have them first each give a brief synopsis of what they've done over the last 2 weeks. And as long as they've done something towards that, they get full credit. It's only when they haven't that they lose credit. So I have that, and then when they do actually manage to change it, and my classes began this, the classes applaud for them when they do that. When a student has succeeded in changing something, they get a lot of applause. So there's that.
Do you know about the Upstanders project through the Facing History organization?
No.
So I think you might want to just Google Upstanders, like UPSTANDERS, like upstanders instead of bystanders, and then Facing History. I think they have an amazing curriculum and ideas and resources for teachers who want students to think about not just being bystanders, but upstanders, and like the very same thing that you said, being change agents in their community, in their local and national community. I think, and then there's a woman in California who's currently writing a teacher resource, a book about it that will be out next year, which I'm really looking forward to reading, because it's all about student empowerment in terms of social justice issues. But I think Facing History would be a great organization to look into for you, for the work that you're already doing in your classroom around creating social change and empowering students to create social change.
Thanks.
Absolutely. It's 7:37, and I wanted to take a moment to review, if it's okay with you. I wanted to take a moment to review this week and next week's major assignment about reimagining a piece of your curriculum. So very briefly, if you haven't had a chance to look online and look over the assignment description on Blackboard, part 1 is asking you to write a brief reflection on a current unit in your classroom practice. I know some people are not currently in a classroom practice, and you can use something that you've created in the past, something that you've even taught in the past as a teacher or as a student teacher. Feel free to do that. And then it's asking you to examine it against your beliefs about teaching and learning. Where does it align? Where does it differ? And just reflect on how it went when you used it with students. How did you feel empowered by teaching this unit? How did the students feel empowered by learning through this unit? Where does it flow, to use the term from Thrive, and where does it not flow in your practice? So that's part 1, and it's pure just reflection on a teaching experience that you've had using that current unit. And then please include like specific components or activities or assessment pieces that worked or didn't work or could have worked better. And then the second part is, after all that you've been through in the last 5 weeks, when you've thought about principles of connected learning, after reading most of Thrive, some of you might already be finished with Thrive, how would you reimagine the specific unit that you just wrote a reflection about? What specific changes would you make to this unit? Why would you make those changes? And you would submit the two versions, the old and the new, and you would highlight specific changes that you made, and then at the end you would make comments about the specific changes that you made and why you made them and how you think they would empower students that you have taught or students that you're currently teaching. So this is a two-part assessment piece, and I wanted to reiterate some of the components and clarify some of the components of it, but I also wanted to open it up to take questions if you had specific questions about this assessment or anything else that has been laid out for you. So are there questions about this piece?
I emailed you earlier because I didn't have a lesson plan. I had learning support. I didn't make the lesson plan. So what I did was I found the lesson plan, and I went through it and highlighted the things that I would like, and then the things that I would change to make it more higher level thinking, projects that I would do, ways that I would change it. But it's not exactly what you just said because obviously I haven't actually got the lesson plan.
Okay, that's fine. You adapted the assessment to what works for you. That's fine. That will work. How about others?
Okay.
Actually, the biggest question I had about the assignment is, can I do it in a Google Doc instead of Word? I don't have Word on my computer, and I don't know what other.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You can
Because the
submit.
instructions specifically said Word.
No, I think I just said that because I feel like I struggle to be specific, and I'm trying to not be so open-ended and give people enough structure so they feel empowered to do their very best work in this course. So, but yeah, feel free to use Google Docs if that's what works for you.
Okay, thanks.
Are there others who might have question about this assessment or anything else? It would be kind of a huge like step towards going public as a scholar and as a teacher, but if you wanted to publish this assignment on your blog, that would feel, you know, hugely vulnerable at times, but it might be worth doing if you wanted to have more of a public dialogue about your work and get even more feedback than just my thoughts on your unit or the changes that you would make. So publishing this widely, while it might be scary, might be worth doing, and that's something to possibly think about. Any thoughts about going public with writing or units? Are you required to share your units with someone other than your immediate supervisor? Like, are there times where you examine your curriculum and your unit plans with someone in your department or in your school?
Well, Upper Dublin, we don't have to share our plans with anybody, so it's basically what we want to do as long as we cover the material.
That's interesting, June.
Yeah, I submit a lesson plan, a weekly lesson plan that's pretty like vague. That's my only requirement. And to be honest, my supervisor has an admitted math phobia, so I don't really get feedback on my lessons. We don't do unit, like obviously I plan a unit, but like I don't just submit it to anyone. And the teachers at my school, I collaborate with maybe like one or two, but it's not like very collaborative or sharing of anything in my department.
Okay, that's interesting.
In my experience in my experience in Upper Dublin, the middle school in Upper Dublin, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the English team who purposely meets collaboratively every week. So yes, there are others that, you don't really get an opportunity, but I was fortunate enough to be a part of a team that purposely collaborates, gets feedback from each other, and bounces ideas off of one another.
Is this the group that Kira sometimes joins and gives feedback on?
That yes, sometimes, along with Leif Gustafson. And then there's a whole other group at Upper Dublin High School called UDACT that meets up on a weekly basis. But I'm talking specifically about the English
okay.
at the middle school.
At the middle school. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Apparently it's not as common, according to everyone else.
No, it doesn't seem so, hearing from others. Jennifer, were you about to share something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, we don't have to submit our lesson plans unless we get evaluated. So if there's like a classroom evaluation, then you have to submit your lesson plan. But other than that, I mean, the coworker that I work with, her and I just share pretty much every day. We have lunch together, which is kind of nice. So we just kind of go over the weeks ahead, and we're always on the same. She teaches the same subject, so we're always on the same page, teaching the same lesson. I mean, it may be different how we present it, but for the most part, it's the same. We're always on the same unit, so we're always in collaboration, which is nice. But we don't have to submit anything, which is really nice.
I think it's interesting the different varying degrees of requirement in terms of like 4 submissions weekly or 4 submissions of unit plan versus what Tanu described of teachers willingly meeting on their own time and making an effort to connect. And then it also makes me think about how powerful tools like Google Docs, where you can make anything public and get feedback and input from teachers, and even like curate resources with like an ease of a tweet or a Facebook post. So I did something interesting last week. I was wrapping up the school year. Tomorrow is actually our last staff day for the school year. And I was like, you know what? I want to use more poetry and use it more thoughtfully in my practice next year. So what would it look like if I just created a public Google Doc and asked teachers around the country to add their favorite poem and maybe like one sentence about why they use it with teachers. And then I just tweeted it out, and I asked other people to tweet it, retweet it, and then it like spiraled. And now I don't know how big the Google Doc is, but people have just been adding links to poems or copying and pasting their favorite poems in the way they use it with their students. And now, like, for 180 days, I have way more than 180 poems that I can choose from, and I don't have to use all of them, but like I won't be starting from scratch next year. Like I won't be like starting the morning of like, oh God, what poem do I want to use? Like I have a fairly good resource that took me like 2 minutes to curate, and I didn't do anything. Like it was like crowdsourced. And I think that's kind of an interesting, and I didn't do it to be like, hey, like look at me, like I created this resource. Like I just selfishly wanted a good like resource of poems that I would personally choose to use, and didn't want to start from scratch every single morning or every single week. Like, oh God, what poem am I going to use that day? And I just think about the ways that Um, Tools like Google Docs can easily help us collaborate, curate, and collect resources that we may not be fully using to our full potential. So I think that's interesting. Like, for example, a lot of teachers do, whether they're teaching history or math or English, might want to do an article of the week. Like, all of our kids can get better at, reading nonfiction, like Common Core. Oh God, everybody should be reading nonfiction all the time. What would it look like if, like, we collected an article of the week by grade or by subject area? Like, I think it's kind of interesting. Like, all of us have hundreds of links that come across our screen, and some of those articles might make for good reading for our students and good discussion and real world connections. And what would it look like if we just collected a bunch of great articles for our students? um, I feel like there's abundance of information on the web, but having actual users of that content curate and collect resources is powerful, because then you're not the only one doing it. So I wanted to share that, like, one little experiment that I tried, and that has sort of taken off, and now there are, like, all these people adding to the doc that I'll never get to meet, but I'm quite thankful for. How do you imagine um, using a crowdsource resource in your practice? Can you imagine possibilities of using um, other people as potential collaborators, and in what ways would you use their expertise?
I mean, I've done it not necessarily as put it out on Twitter, but like I've always um, resource like with Facebook. I'll put out something to my friends as like if anyone can come speak to my kids, or even like if they have any kind of like classroom material that I could use. I've done that before, and the response has been really good. Um, so, well, I wanted to. I just never got around to it, though. One of my students for her senior grad project actually created, and it was about 90 minutes long, documentary on saying thank you to like teachers and educators, and it was like a really really well done piece, and I wanted to share it out to Facebook, and then I sometimes always just get like concerned and like worried about, I don't know, anything and everything could happen just because of Facebook and like social networking and things like that. So I think like at times I want to be more active and get more feedback from social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter. And on the other hand, I'm always cautious and just like worried about, I don't know, anything and everything that could possibly happen. But I don't know, maybe I'm just paranoid.
I think you're not paranoid. I think you're a thoughtful practitioner who wants to protect her students and protect herself. But I wanna think about the boundary between public and private, especially as you read the next chapter in Thrive about empowering students. And maybe that's a question that we can begin next week's conversation with, about what are the boundaries of public and private in a classroom setting, and how do these boundaries, if any, play out online and via social media, and how does it affect your, what is the role of social media in a teacher's life in 2014, if any? Does it have any place in it? I'd like to sort of think about that with you, and maybe you can keep that question in mind about going public when it comes to the last chapter in Thrive and the other resources that I'll post later today. Speaking of which, I wanted to bring up next week's I think next week is our last week of the class, and I'm still working on grading. I just turned in my grades, so now I can focus on this class. Forgive me for delay in grading, but everyone seems to be doing good work, so I'm not worried. Next week I'm going to be in Maine, and I wanted to check in with level of interest for a last Google Hangout. Would people be interested in? I'm going to be at a writing retreat in Maine, and I'm just thinking about my own time, and I don't want to not meet if there's a large interest in people meeting, and I also don't want to like. I know how hard summer schedule can be for people, so I also don't want to like, force people or make people feel bad if their schedule doesn't allow for a Google Hangout. So I'm specifically talking about the date is Tuesday, June 24th, and I wanted to check in with everyone about how that date looks for them.
The date looks fine for me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Looks fine for me too.
Can you hear me? This is Angelique.
Yeah, Angelique, your microphone's working. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen and Mino, for helping me with my technology. Next week is fine. If we could do it later, like not at 4 p.m., I could do that.
I think we've been doing 7 just to allow everyone to have time. So should I just keep it, and then whoever can join will join? Should we just leave it as that?
Yeah.
The 24th
Yeah.
works fine for me too.
Okay, I'll just leave it as the 24th, and if there is any I don't want to miss this conversation because I enjoy these conversations, but if there's some like I'm going to be up in Maine and I don't know what my connectivity is going to be like, but I will post on Blackboard if there is any change or conflict. But I'm going to be up there for a week, so it's not like I like all of a sudden I'll have connectivity if I don't have it. But I'll keep you posted, and we'll keep the date as is. We have 4 minutes remaining, and I wanted to give opportunity for people to ask any questions or bring up any concerns or anything before we head into our last week of this online course.
Mino, for me, my weakness in coming in late to the course because of technology issues is that I'm not well versed on the blog creation, which is what I'm missing, and I really need somebody's help if possible. And
If you want to stay past at the end of this broadcast and this Google Hangout, if you just want to stay online, I can easily help you set up a blog or give you some links or resources on starting a blog.
perfect, because I have a lot to say.
Happy to help, Anjali.
I had a question.
How about others? Yeah, sure.
So on the syllabus, there are a list of assignments, and then, of course, every week you post a list of assignments on Blackboard. Now, some of them don't align, so I don't know if I should be doing the assignments on the syllabus.
You should go off the Blackboard because that's what the grade book and the grade is made up of. When I wrote the syllabus, I had as a teacher, like when you write a syllabus, you're like, oh, I'm going to do all these things, but then the reality like transpires slightly different and probably slightly less than ideal. So my apologies that timing or even the week might be off, but you should go off. The simple and honest answer is you should go off what's on Blackboard because that's how the grade will be reviewed and collected.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for a great question. Others?
Minu, this is Angelique again. With our papers or our responses, were they supposed to be written like papers? Because that's how I wrote them. or were they just supposed to be kind of reflections in a kind of a non-boundary driven communication?
No, I think you should. I think you should treat it like academic writing, and you should write in a way that suits you and produces the best work for you. But yeah, the assignment should be treated like a writing assignment for a graduate course.
Thank you.
Sure
I
thing.
have to make sure I'm not missing any. Like, we were just supposed to be posting on the blog, like all of those assignments, correct?
Yeah, you can post them on the blog, or sometimes people have submitted via Blackboard as well. So I'll check both places.
So if I didn't, like some of those things, it was like 100 points for this, do this. Like I just posted on my blog because I supposed to
Yeah,
also.
no,
That.
that's fine. That's fine. The blog was specifically created to help you create your public identity as an educator. So, ultimate, the highest ideal is that you will continue these practices and these connections and these conversations even after the course has ended. So, if you post it on the blog, like kudos to you for making your thinking public, and I'll get it off the blog.
Okay.
But with my blog, I didn't necessarily write it academically.
That and
You know,
that right, and that's fine too, because with each medium, I think our purpose, our audience, and our style changes, and that's understandable too. I don't want to get hung up on the on the how. I think I'm more interested in why you're doing the things that you're doing and what you're thinking. So like the how is going to be like, I think let's just be honest, like you have one ideal or one expectation of an assignment, and then the same person in the same class has a different one, and then the instructor has a third one. Like, let's be honest, like that's what kind of teaching in the real world is really like. Like you expect kids to produce one thing and then they produce something else, and you're like, what the heck did I teach? Like, did I not teach this? So I don't want to get hung up. Everyone's smiling because everyone has experienced this. Like, I don't want to get hung up on like you did this wrong. Like I want to think, I want to push your thinking more deeply and hopefully get you to a more honest, even vulnerable place, and to get you to open up more about your practice. So in whatever way that happens, I welcome it. And again, this is first round of students taking the course and going through the intended assignment, so I'll adapt and change like any instructor would after I'm done teaching this class. And thank you for going along on this ride. It's 8:02 and I want to honor people's time, so I'm gonna end the broadcast, but anyone who wants to stick around and ask extra questions can feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday at 7 from Maine this time. Yay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.